All right. Hello and welcome everyone to my show, How to Market and Sell Life Coaching. I'm Ashley Jangro, your host. And today we're hearing from certified life coach and website designer, Jennie Lakeman. Am I saying your last name right? Lakeman?
Yes,
Okay,
you got
perfect.
it.
Jennie, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so excited. Thanks for having me, Ashley.
Well, I cannot wait to hear your story. So, this is a little bit of a unique episode because you have kind of a different business setup where life coaching is not the primary way you market yourself. You market yourself as a web designer. I'm really curious what made you decide to bring life coaching into that. So, I'll ask that in a few minutes. So, to start out, we're just going to kind of back up to the beginning and outline how you got to where you are. And then we'll reverse engineer the steps that you took that would be applicable to other life coaches building their business. I feel like you have a unique take on this because it would apply to the way you've marketed, the way I've watched you market will apply to life coaches because you get out there and you provide a ton of value. And that's one of the ways you market. It'll also apply to individuals who have another skill set. So you are first a web designer, second to life coach. So if someone's listening who maybe is an accountant or a bookkeeper or whatever, and also wants to market that they're a life coach, it would apply for them as well. But then third, you and I talked about is just that you've really niched down. So you have like a very, very specific niche. So if there's anyone listening that has that case, it would apply as well. So yeah. So for anybody listening, we live during the live premiere right now. Let us know where you're listening from. Let us know what kind of coaching you do. And then throughout this episode, feel free to ask questions or type any comments. I'm right there in the comments with you, ready to connect and answer questions. And Jennie will be around if she's able. So, again, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Jennie.
Excited. Let's dive
So,
in.
yeah, so we're going to first start out by backing up. So, when you were already a web designer and then you decided to become a life coach, do I have that right?
Actually, it kind of started with coaching and then went web design and then went back to
Okay,
coaching
yeah. So,
again.
kind of tell
So
us how you started with that. What made you decide to become a life coach once you were already doing that?
yeah, so my first of all, like my background, like my education and degree is in psychology with an emphasis in like computing and coding and stuff. So, and I had worked part-time in the past as like a developer basically, but I was doing the stay-at-home mom thing, like a lot of us do at the beginning. And then I found coaching, like found this coaching podcast that was just like like we all do, you kind of start listening, you're like a little skeptical, you're like, I
Huh?
don't know, but my friends say this is awesome though, so I guess I'm gonna listen. And again, those words in my ears just every day, listening to an episode or two a day for a while, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like my life started changing just from passively listening, like,
Wow.
and thinking
Yeah.
about the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And like I lost weight and I had a better relationship with my husband. And like I just felt less resentment and more connection in my relationships. And I just felt happier. And I was
Oh, wow.
like, these tools are amazing. Like everyone needs to know about them. And I was kind of like ready to get back into like the workforce a little bit. And so
Uh-huh.
I was, because as my kids were growing, and I was like, all right, I'm going to be a coach. Like this sounds amazing.
So you
And
weren't even
so,
initially thinking like, okay, I'm going to be a website developer and I'm going to have
mm-mm.
coaching. You were thinking like, forget this stuff. I'm going to go be a life coach.
Yeah, because I was a pretty open book. I was like, I've done,
Mm-hmm.
my degrees in psychology, so I could go do
Mm-hmm.
like some counseling work, or I could I could get like a master's in counseling, or I could do coaching, or like I was pretty open at that point. I
Okay.
wasn't necessarily seeing myself as like a designer or a developer, even though I'd done some of that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so as I started working towards life coach certification, and I really wanted to like talk to as many coaches as I could. Kind of,
Mm-hmm.
like when we decide on a career, we're like, okay, well, I want to talk to as many people
Yeah.
that do that so I can know how to best prepare. So I started finding as many coaches as I could online that would give me the time of day, and give me like kind of an experiential interview. And they were all so sweet and like answered my questions. A lot of them were going through training at that time. And so they had like a lot of really valuable input. And I would just ask them, like, what can I do to prepare to be a coach and to get
Uh-huh.
certified and everything? And as I started talking to them, and I'd kind of like look them up beforehand and be able to be prepared for that call, I started to just see that either they didn't have a website at all, or Their website was not represented. It wasn't a good representation of the skills that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And as we do as entrepreneur-minded
Mm-hmm.
people, you see a problem
Brain
that needs
starts
to be
going.
solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just decided like I want to solve that problem. Like I could be the one to solve that. And like in the beginning, I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll do this for a little while and then I'll do coaching later. And I was a little bit in between for a couple of months. And then after about 6 months, though, I was like, oh, I love doing this. I love the design aspect. I'm very systems oriented, and having an agency like this is like a beautiful playground for systems. And like I was just having so much fun, and getting clients was, the network that I'm in is very referral based, very tight niche. And
Mm-hmm.
so like they would just refer me to their friends. And so it was really a really beautiful thing. But then you're probably wondering like, well, okay, then why?
Well, I mean, I'm picking up so many interesting things from what you're saying. Like just the fact
Mhm.
that when you decided to become a life coach, you decided I'm going to go out there and interview these other life coaches just to see what it's like and to get advice. That's fascinating. I mean, I think that's
Mhm.
really good advice for anybody starting out. Like talk to
Mhm.
other coaches. So you began to build up your network. It gave you an idea of where you wanted to focus your energy.
Mhm.
And ultimately, you ended up building a business out of it. I think that's amazing. What a great strategy.
Mhm.
So then you started, I mean, when you would get on these calls with coaches where you couldn't find their website, you realized they didn't have a website. Did you start pitching them immediately? Did you start saying, hey, by the way?
No, I didn't. I probably should have. That would have been a good marketing tactic, but no. I really legitimately went on those calls like just wow, curious and like asking questions and stuff. But once I started to realize like, oh, this is like an offer I could make. I guess I did pitch one of them. I said, hey, how about at the end of our call? I was like, how
Mm-hmm.
about we trade services? Like you can coach me for
Mm-hmm.
like a couple sessions and I'll build you a website for free. And she was one that like her website was live, but it was like a template and it still had all like the lorem ipsum text on it and stock
Uh-huh.
photos and stuff. And I was just like, oh, bless her. Like she did the work to like get
Yeah,
this far and she's probably just kind of stuck, And I was like, I could help her with that. And so I made that offer and she was like, yes, done. Like that sounds
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, that does
And
sound amazing.
so
What a cool offer. Okay.
yeah, so I built her website. She was like my first, like free website that I built,
Uh-huh.
which a lot of agencies will do that in the beginning just to like build their
Yeah.
portfolio. And so
Yeah.
I did that and then I marketed for a couple of months and those months were so painful. Those first few months before you have
Mhm.
your first paying client or year or however long it is, it's
Yes.
just like you're just struggling so much with belief and like it's such an uncomfortable place to be. But
So at that point, were you marketing yourself as a web designer or as a coach?
mhm,
Okay,
as a
so
web
as a web
designer.
designer, what were the strategies that you were trying at that time that didn't feel like they were like taking root?
Yeah. That's a good question. I probably posted on like Instagram a little bit, but it's like
Huh?
probably wasn't very effective because I didn't I had like 50 followers or something,
Yeah, yeah.
which that's good, but it's like that's more of a long-term strategy. I also like redid my own website, which was good, but also I probably spent too much time on on it.
Mhm.
Um and and then what finally worked for me was I decided to stop feeling sorry for myself and
Okay.
I sat down and I outlined like my basic web design process
Uh-huh.
that I would take to like actually have a paying client and build
Mhm.
them a website. And I spent like a week or two just kind of outlining it very, very high level. But what was fascinating about that was like doing that exercise, spending just a tiny bit of time on it helped build my confidence in what I offered and that
Because
it
you
was
had like more
actually,
of a formal offer as opposed to,
yeah,
yeah, I'll build your website.
yeah. And it really boosted my confidence. And again, I didn't like take a ton of time to do it. I just sort of like almost chicken scratch notes. I'd probably laugh now if I look back at that
Yeah.
Google Doc, but just it was enough to boost my confidence. And then I was able to have a little bit more clarity around like,
Uh-huh.
okay, what can I do just to get scrappy here and make like make an
Mm.
offer in a way that feels genuine and is an easy yes for somebody. And
So it
so,
felt like for like a couple of months, you were kind of passively hoping that somebody would become your client and maybe putting a
yeah.
little bit of information out there. But then
Hmm.
you became like you started taking action. So you had this offer that you were ready to do. What did you do next?
So I took that list of all those coaches that I had reached out to and had either calls with or just we had emailed back and forth. And I emailed all of them one by one,
Uh-huh.
individually with basically just a really casual kind of offer. It was like, hey, I'm doing free website strategy calls. Like, let me know if that's something that would be helpful for you.
Wow.
And and one of them actually replied and she was like, bless her, Laura. she was like, oh, actually, I'd like to talk to you about building a website for me.
Okay, so how many coaches do you think you emailed with that?
um, Probably a couple of dozen.
Okay. I love hearing that because when you just said that, I thought, and you were going to say they all emailed you back. One emailed you back.
Probably a few emailed me back and were like, oh, that's fine. Thanks.
I'm
I'm
good.
good.
Okay. So one took you up on it. I love hearing that because, when I was doing one of these interviews a few months ago with Lakendra, she was reaching out to business owners and she talked about how
Mhm.
she reached out to maybe, I think she said like hundreds, and then a couple would get back to her. So I love for coaches and coaches, if you're listening to the live right now, I'd love for you to put in the chat if this is something you've done where you start to reach out and you're like, oh, okay, well, I emailed 10 people and nobody got back to me. So I'm good. Like, that's probably not going to work. Where you were
Right.
persistent and kept emailing or emailed a number and you got a small amount back. So I think that's really
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, and cold emailing is a tactic that works. It's just a numbers game, and that
Yeah.
can be really discouraging. But for mine, like I wouldn't consider that cold emailing because they were warm,
You
like
would
they
kind of talk.
knew
Yeah.
me. So, I don't know if I would have had the guts at that time to try like cold
Yeah.
emailing. It would have been tough, but for sure, reaching out to people in your network that are warm and that know you is a
Mhm.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. So do you feel like that's something that you could have done if you had chosen to become a coach? Is that something
Mhm.
that you could have used as a strategy as a life coach?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. 100%.
So here's my offer. Here's what I coach on. We've talked. I'd love to see if you're interested.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's
From a place
fantastic.
of like, this is great. And they may say no, and that's cool. But there may be someone out there that's desperate for this and that would be an immediate yes. And
Mhm.
I'm doing this work and I'm willing to get the no's so that I can reach that person that
Yes.
needs my help.
I mean, I think that you hit on something really important there was that you were like lacking belief. And then as you began to take action, that's what really built up your belief.
Mhm. It does help for sure.
Yeah. So you were a few months in, you got one yes. What happened next?
Yeah, well, I got her into my onboarding process. Like we did the whole thing. And then I had another yes later that week that was the mother of the free website that I had built a couple months
Oh,
earlier. She
wow.
was
Okay.
a CPA, so it's not a
Mhm.
coach, but it was like service-based business. I can help you,
Mhm.
And then that first coach client, Laura, referred me to one of her friends that was also in certification and that wanted to have a website built. And then she was a yes. And then I think the two of them referred me to one of their other friends. And then it was like, because they all knew each
Just
other
kept
and they
coming.
were
Yeah.
all in the same place, like, it had a lot of traction.
Wow. Well, I think you had something, one of my coaches always tells me like the best thing you can do for yourself is help people know how to talk about you when you're not in the room. So if they know exactly what to say, like somebody's like, I'm a new coach. I need to have a website. And they're like, oh, I know the exact person for you. She is also a coach. So she understands your messaging and she
Mm-hmm.
builds websites for new coaches. So it's
For
like
sure.
so
Hmm.
much clarity around your offer.
And at the time, of course, like I wasn't a coach yet, but I knew the
The
coaching world
language.
that they
Okay.
were in, and I could speak the language, and I knew what they needed, and so like that was still a really big part of the conversation that I think helped them to make a
When you
decision.
say you weren't a coach because you were still doing certification.
I hadn't even started certification at that time.
Oh, I misunderstood that. Okay, so at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get certified?
Yeah, so I was in that messy middle for a couple of months where I was like, am I a web designer that's working
Hmm.
towards certification and I'm just going to jump into the coaching pool after I certify,
Hmm.
or am I going to do the web design thing fully? And I had kind of like, well, I had committed. I was like, no, I am a web designer. Like I'm
Hmm.
not, I'm not lying to anybody here that I'm going to jump ship in a couple months, or I don't know why that at the time that felt so important to like make that
It felt
decision,
really
but
dramatic in your
it
mind.
felt really dramatic. Yeah. Anyway, but I was like, nope, I'm a web designer. Like that is how I identify myself. And then about 6 months in, I had a client and, she could probably listen to this someday. And so I want to like respect her privacy, but it was one of those things where she came to me and my perception of her was just that like, it's like, she is the most confident about her niche of any coach that I had met thus far.
Mm-hmm.
And she was finishing certification. So she was still like pretty new, but she was so confident. And I was like, awesome, great, like cool. And then we got partway through the project. Like it was the week that I think I needed like the rest of the website copied. Like
Yeah.
she written a little bit and then she needed to finish like all of it. And we got on the call and she was like, Jennie, I'm having niche drama. And I
Oh,
was like, oh,
okay.
okay. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and I just kind of like I talked her through it. I didn't panic. I was just kind of like, okay, cool. Let's talk about this. Like, what are your thoughts? And at the like later, she told me, she's like, you really coached me through that. Like, that was really, really helpful.
And you were
But in
like,
that
hmm.
moment, like afterwards, I was kind of like, well, that was so unexpected because she was the one that was like the most confident at the start. I thought she wouldn't have niche drama. Not that there was any problem that she did, but it just helped me to see. It's like, oh, even the most confident of a coach can
Uh-huh.
have stuff come up during their website project. And
Yes.
I need I need to have these skills to be able
Mm.
to confidently like handle those
Mm-hmm.
situations. Like I guess I did okay in that one. She said it was helpful, but I'm like, I want to have more confidence in my ability to like hold space for someone in that
Mm-hmm.
situation and coach them through it if they want me to. And so that was the moment that I was like, I still need to do certification. Like this is still
I
knowing the
love
skills,
this. This is so
knowing the
fascinating to me.
like knowing the lingo and like kind of knowing what the tools are, but not having like been certified, like that's not enough. I need to
Yeah.
like really
Have
know
the
them.
skills. I think this is really interesting because I've done enrollment coaching so I've been the like individual that answers the calls if someone's considering certification or not. And I've done that for a few different certification programs. And I love when I talk to a some sort of service provider that maybe they are, a financial advisor. And they're like, I kind of am thinking that maybe I need these coaching skills. And I always think, yes, this would be so amazing if financial advisors had these skills. I've never thought about a web designer having these skills, but how incredibly valuable. So anytime someone because we've talked about my website before. I get all up in my head about all the different aspects of it, still do. And that would be incredibly helpful to have someone who understood how to coach when that happened. So I think that's really fascinating. So you were building all these websites, you began to get certified, you started adding that into there. Did you start talking about that in your marketing?
Yeah, oh for sure. Actually, it's really fascinating when I look back at my Instagram account, like because that's where I primarily have marketed throughout all the times I've had my business. I was very vocal about like, hey, I just like started certification. Here's my welcome package, because they used to like ship you like the workbooks and stuff. And
Yeah.
like, and then I would post I did like a live one time when I had my first like curriculum call where, you had to get like coach live and then
Mhm.
get evaluated and stuff. And like
Yes.
all of those posts, all of those like live things, those are like some of my highest engagement stuff of all time
Really?
because
Okay.
it was just so relatable. Like
Yeah.
everyone was in it too, and they knew exactly what I was talking about. And it was just some
Mhm.
really cool conversations that happened around that.
What year was that? What year did you get certified?
So I finished early 2020. So
Okay.
yeah, like I started in August of 2019.
Okay. So it was almost exactly a year before I started. I started September the year after that. Okay. So it just gives me some like timeline in my mind. Okay. So at this point, had you started to gain that reputation of okay, when a coach needs a website, because this is what I know about you now. If a coach needs a website, your name comes up no matter what. Like you are known as the go-to website person for coaches. Had that already started happening?
Think, yeah, it happened pretty quick. Like within the first 6 months, I feel like that kind of started to happen. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not 100% sure because I wasn't in like the community yet as an alumni yet, but I definitely had started to get some inquiries that didn't end up panning out into clients, but like that just that level of coach was like even
Uh-huh.
requesting to like talk
Uh-huh.
to me about a website, I was like floored. And also that is really what kind of pushed my husband and me to go like really full time with the business. And he quit his
Mhm.
job and stuff, was because I was like, I cannot be serving this level of client and being a full-time mom at the same time.
Mhm.
Like we need, it's time for us to like make that shift. And so we did that pretty quick. Not that I'm
What?
saying everyone should, but
Right,
it was
right.
right for us.
But that was the right thing for you guys to do. So what do you feel like you did to help make that happen?
It's a good question. To help
Reach
to help it
that level
grow.
of client.
Yeah. So definitely being as specialized as I
Mm. Mhm.
was what really helped that. Like, and that's why when coaches come to me and they're like, "Oh, is this niche too tight? Like, when I'm writing my copy,
Mm.
can I niche down to, like this age level of girls or whatever, or anything?" I'm just like, no, you can't. You can almost never be too specific,
Yeah.
because as long as they are moneyed, that they have the cash to actually pay for the services, and that they want to pay for the services that you provide, like I don't
Uh-huh.
think you can be too specific, because
Mm.
that just helps you to actually get their attention.
Right. So it's almost like being that niche to help you get more clients. Whereas if you had been a general website designer and people are like, yeah, she's really good at building websites, that may have had a different impact than she is the go-to person for coaches if they need a
Mhm.
website.
Yeah, and not just coaches, but coaches that are certified through like this particular certification program. Like
Mm.
that's what it
Mhm.
was. And that still is in large part what it is, though of course now I have lots of clients that are not with that one particular
Mhm.
certification program, but like that was really what helped the most, I think.
So you, I mean, the benefit there was you understood their language, you understood how to like, how do you build their website in a way that would support exactly what they were trying to do?
Yeah, I could speak their language, and I like I was so mission driven. Like the reason why I started getting into the coaching world at all in like a business sense was because I loved the tools and I wanted to get them out there. And like
Yes.
I
Yeah.
realized I could do that better by helping coaches with their websites and their online
Mhm.
presence than I could just by being a coach myself, because that's a
Mm.
fairly narrow
Mhm.
window.
This is so
So
good because this is exactly why I think a lot of people end up working with other coaches is because we're so incredibly passionate about how much we can help change the world that we're like, whatever skills we have to help other coaches get out there in a bigger sense, we want to do that. So, like, I coach coaches on how to get better at selling their services, marketing and selling their services, because I want those tools to be available to more individuals than what I could serve myself. So I love that. That's so good. So talk to me about, so we're partway into still your first year, right? Of building these websites and getting certified.
I was in the middle of certification at the end of first year of business. I started
Okay.
in end of 2018, and then I finished certification early 2020. So yeah, it was like that 2019 year was kind of the first full year.
Okay. So, and your strategy at this time was still primarily referrals. Were you getting clients from social media?
No, I still don't know that social media for me has never been like a direct marketing effort. It's always been like people that already know me, and
Okay.
it's to like nurture and be kind of that touch point,
Yeah.
in my opinion anyway. Maybe I'm wrong, and some client will raise their hand and be like, I found you on Instagram,
Yeah,
but
I'm the one that found you there. I mean, that's really interesting. So you don't necessarily use it to get new clients. You rely on referrals to do that, but it's just kind of your you have your established presence there and you're nurturing. Okay.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
tell me about how much did you earn your first year?
Yeah, so first year total top line revenue was about 130,000.
Wow, this is so interesting. You and I were talking about this before, how a lot of the coaches that I've interviewed on here have said, yeah, I made it through my first year without making a single dollar, and sometimes second year too, which I think is entirely
Mhm.
possible. I think what sets you apart in that is, again, you brought in another skill set and you were
Mhm.
so specifically niched that it was really easy
Mhm.
for people to very quickly um, talk about you easily when you were not in the room.
Yep.
That's really good. Okay. So when did you hit that point? I mean, you kind of mentioned it when you talked about your deciding that your husband had to leave work, but when do you feel like you hit that point where you felt like you had made it?
Oh man, that's such a good question. I think I've hit that point at lots of different times in my business. I felt like we made it when I had that inquiry, or a couple of different inquiries, really, like a few months in from, pretty big names
Uh-huh.
that of course didn't sign into projects, but just, yeah, like I said, helped us to just kind of realize like, oh, it's time to make this transition. And at that same month was the first month that I made as much in the business as my husband made, like in his day job.
Mm-hmm.
And then he quit his job, and like I felt like we arrived in that moment.
Was that scary?
Yeah, it was, but also like we had like prayed about it. I mean, we had like, we really felt like spiritually, and this was the right move
Yeah.
for us at that time, and it was so the right move. Like, I would not have been able to make 130K that first year if
Yeah.
we had been still trying to balance, if I'd been trying to balance being a mom and working full time and not having his support at home.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When did you feel like, and I think this is an interesting question, because so many of us get into this and we're scrappy and we can hustle our way to a certain point. When did you feel
Mhm.
like the income had become predictable, something you could count on?
Mm, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that we was gonna say, like, I
We're
don't know
not
if
there
we ever
yet.
feel that way. Like, I mean, in the one instance, I have a lot of confidence because we've been able to do it for
Mhm.
so long. So maybe, but even I'd say even like 2 years in, I was still kind of like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I always feel doubt whenever I see empty spots
Mhm.
in the calendar upcoming,
Mhm.
empty client spots, but also looking back over the last year, 2 years, like they've consistently filled and we've been fine. Like, we've been taken care of, and our, clients have been very, very generous with their referrals, and, you know, like God is always taking care of us, but
Uh-huh.
also still just that fear. What definitely helped was when we started, um, really, when I started getting better at selling our recurring revenue offer,
Mhm.
which is like basically website care after your
Mhm.
website is built, or if you have
Mhm.
a current site that someone else built and you want us to maintain it, we can do that too. And when I started getting better at selling that, and that
Mhm.
started to be more of a bigger percentage of our monthly revenue, that for sure helps with any like, oh no, where's the money going to come from? Because it's like,
Yeah.
well, even if that has some churn, as any recurring product does, like that's still,
You at
there's
least
not going to be,
know. Yeah.
there's some, it helps to stabilize the, kind of ups and downs of service-based business. So that
So
helped a lot.
when you first started out, tell me what it was like. You would have a consult call with somebody, and those consult calls were coming primarily from referrals. Somebody would book a time with you, and then you would sell them on the idea of working with you and tell them the price right there. Was your price always the same? Was it different based on what someone needed?
Yeah. So it was different based on like the project scope, but I
Mm-hmm.
had a fairly like I had a kind of a standard sitemap, and I still do, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just, I knew what the price was for that, and then we would just add or take away depending on what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would adjust the price from there. So
Okay. And the reason I'm asking this is so for coaches, those of you that are listening right now, if you are a coach, this is how you kind of think of it. It's the same as, you're selling your coaching package. So you have kind of a standard price. If somebody needs something different, maybe you're going to alter it a little bit, but you have that standard price. You get on a consult call with someone, you tell them, here's what you can expect after working with me. You let them know your price. And then at a certain point, that kind of filled up, right? What did you do as that began to fill up? Did you increase your prices? Did you create a wait list? What did you do with that?
yeah, so within the period of that first 6 months, I increased my price almost every time, just because like my skills were building, my portfolio was
Mhm.
building, and I was very, very inexpensive at the very beginning anyway. I think I charged like $500 for that
For a
first website.
website? Oh, I wish I would
Yeah.
have met you then. That would have been fun.
Well, what we build is a lot better than what we build now is a lot better than what we built then anyway. But as our, as our skills got better, and as I started to just equalize with what I could have charged in the beginning anyway, but I just didn't because I was working on belief.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, we got to a happy spot pretty quickly. But I almost like increased it every client or two for the first 6 months. Just as I started to really see what the value was.
I love this because this is the same for coaching. So a lot of coaches start out by offering their services for free at first. And then as they build their belief with the results that they see clients getting. So you did the same thing. You did an exchange, you built a website, you began to see, oh, this is pretty good. It began to
Mhm.
increase your belief, just like a coach, as they begin coaching, see those results, their belief builds, and then they can begin to increase their prices if they are realizing that their pricing is not keeping up with the value of what their client receives. So it's the exact
Mhm.
same thing, even though it's not coaching. So you increase those prices. And then what about when you started? Have you reached that point where you're like, I can't take on any more clients? What did you do there?
Oh, I just would book them out. So, like I would say, hey, our next spot is opening like mid-December, and
Mhm.
you can sign up now and you'll start on this date. And I even had like I have like a couple emails that I'll send them in between now and then just to kind of help them get started with content writing and stuff. And that's what I still do too. We've never been booked out more than like a couple of months, but
Mhm.
when we are booked out more like about a couple of months, I take like instead of doing the first 50% upfront, like is what we usually do, I just take
Mhm.
like $1,000 non-refundable booking fee. And I just say, hey, this is you
Mhm.
reserving your spot on my
Mhm.
calendar. And then if they decide to back out between now and then, that's totally okay. But it prevents me from like taking the full 50% and then 3 months later they decide like, oh,
Mhm.
whoops, refund me the whole thing, please. And I've done that a couple of times and it was kind of like, well, but there is some costs of having our
Yeah.
calendar slot and we give that up for someone else and also the admin work of.
Yep. So
So
what
that's what
would
we
you
do.
do if you're in that situation and you have a calendar spot that is suddenly open? What do you do to go out and get clients?
Yes, my favorite way to market is by just showing up where my clients hang out and providing a ton of value.
This is what I see evidence of. We're in a group together, where there's a lot of coaches, and I mean, I think I saw this week somebody tagged you because they were trying to figure out how to do something technical, and they just automatically tag you. You showed up. You gave paragraph long answers along with screenshots of how to do it and where to find the information. Like I constantly see you showing up and providing value in different groups. How do you incorporate that into your schedule?
Yeah. So, and we're talking about like Facebook groups here or anyone listening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Facebook groups is a really, really cool way to market if you love like relationship building and you just like providing value. And I'm able to do so much like trust building in that, like through that. And then by the time someone gets on a sales call, often like they already know they want to work with
They
you.
already know.
We're just
It's
kind
like
of talking like
formalities.
deliverables and building a relationship more and stuff, and which is super fun. And I love relationship building, so it's great for me. um, yeah, so I used to schedule time in my day to like
Mm-hmm.
go on social media and, show up in a couple of Facebook groups that a lot of coaches hang out in and provide value there and just look for anytime anyone was asking a website or a technical related or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes online marketing related question just to like give an answer that was valuable and, yeah, include a screenshot or a quick Google, like some help article that will guide them through what they're trying to do or
Yeah.
whatever. And, I don't do that as much anymore, but I kind of want to get back to scheduling it because it makes it more fun and I'm more focused and it's more valuable when I do
Yeah.
that.
Instead
So
of like trying to squeeze it in between projects.
yeah, or like, when I'm like laying in bed at night,
Yeah.
that's not a
Yeah.
great use of energy.
I mean, it's been very helpful in getting your name out there. What I think is really unique about what you're doing that I think is something that we miss when we're taught to go provide value in Facebook groups is that you're not doing it in a way that directly competes with the Facebook group owner. So you're a web developer. You're not going to another Facebook group of a web developer, and then adding in your value as well.
Oh yeah, that would be so yucky.
So I think as coaches, when we're taught to do that, we're like, well, I can't just go promote what I'm doing. Now, my very first interview, when I interviewed Tavana Boggs, she talked a lot about how she would go into completely different groups. So she, at the time, coached physical therapists. So she wouldn't go into coaching groups and look for physical therapists. She would go into where physical therapists were talking about something completely different and then offer her perspective as a coach. Someone would inevitably be like, wow, you like this is very different than any of the other responses I got. Why? And she'd explain, oh, well, I'm a life coach. And then ultimately they would end up DMing each other, or they'd end up on a call. So I think that this is something so incredibly valuable. When as a life coach, you know your niche, you can go into Facebook groups where you're not in direct competition with the Facebook group owner, and then provide your insight as from the perspective of a coach. And then you're not promoting yourself. You're providing a different way of thinking of things than the rest of the response, the people responding in the Facebook group. So that's what you did.
Yes,
You came
100%.
in and provided value from the perspective of a website developer in coaching groups, which no one would think that those two are, competitive at all. So I really, really love that. So I think of it as like, if you're a weight loss coach and you're going into other weight loss groups and providing your perspective, that's a little bit uncomfortable because you're competing with the group owner.
Yeah, and you've got to find the right groups, right? Like I love how Corinne Crabtree talks about, like, for her back in the day, it wasn't Facebook groups, it was the Weight Watchers message boards, which maybe that could be seen as like direct competition, but she wasn't like no BS weight loss yet. She was like, just doing some, like, helping basically with implementation of what the members were already learning there, and she was just being useful and helpful
and providing the insight from the perspective of a life coach. I love that one too, because it can seem a little bit like, okay, you're promoting this thing that's in competition, but not really, because Weight Watchers is so dramatically different from coaching. So it's like you're going into places and then providing that unique perspective. So I think that that's some of the value that we can, as coaches, can take away from what you're doing. So
I think the trick to it is just that you've got to be like, there's an art to it. Like, you got to do it in a way that's not promo-y, and like in a way that, like, honestly, if the admin of the Facebook group that the couple Facebook groups I'm in, if they were like, Jennie, you can comment, you can stay in this group, but you need to take your website off your profile. Like, you need to, this is too much, too much marketing for you. Like, I probably would, and I would stay in the group because I just love doing it so much. Like, it really is, for me, that's the first reason why I do it, is because I want to help the coaches in that group. I just love the community so much. And so I feel like if it weren't that way, the people would sense it. They would sense like, oh, Jennie's just helping me because she wants me to buy from her.
Yes. And it never feels like that. It feels like you're very open and serving and willing to serve. So I think it's, not that it's you using it as your marketing strategy, but the way that you do it. So any coaches that are listening right now, if you are in any of those groups that Jennie's in, watch how she does it, because she's genuinely providing value in a way that's not, that's letting people know that that is her concern, not getting clients. And it makes it really easy then, again, to think of you when there's ever a website question or when anybody wants a website. And that is so much more valuable than putting a link to sign up for a consult call with me. So I love that. Okay. So when you said that you added on that new product where you would maintain websites after creating the website, at what point in your business were you like, okay, we need something else in addition to what's going on?
Like, when did we start adding that recurring product?
What made it occur to you that you needed to?
Well, I had it from the beginning as an offer, but because I had a business coach that was like an agency, web designer specific business coach that was like, oh, well, this is just what everyone has, like, and you need to have recurring revenue because that's the gold standard, and it needs to be at least 50% of your revenue and all of that. And I mean, so you're
like, okay, I'll do it.
But I didn't see like the value in it at the beginning, and so I didn't really like sell it very well. I think I had maybe like one or two clients. So
like you'd kind of talk about, and you'd be like, yeah, here's a thing you can do. Okay.
Yeah. I'd be like, you should probably do this. Well, I was just around longer, and I started to see problems happen from people that didn't maintain their websites. So I started to see like, oh, this is actually something that people need. And also I started to, I think I started to have clients that maybe weren't brand new and had been in business a little bit longer, and they really appreciated being able to pay someone to make edits to their site instead of having to log in and do it themselves. Like, they weren't in that scrappy phase in the beginning anymore where they needed to just be doing everything themselves. They were really happy to delegate. So the combination of those two things really helped me to be like, oh, this is actually something that I believe in too, and I want to do a better job at selling. And I just figured out kind of how to talk about it.
Yeah. And the reason I'm like clarifying that is probably for selfish reasons. Cause I always talk about like the thing that makes it easiest to sell is if you believe in something. So if you're like, yeah, this is actually very valuable, it becomes so simple to sell. Like you know it. And so why wouldn't someone do that? And so you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I didn't believe in it at first. I was like, oh, people don't really need that. And so you kind of sold it a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
then even if you're not like like someone who consider themselves to be a natural salesperson, once you had that belief, like, oh, this is important, it became easy to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
100%.
I love that. So, was there ever a point? I feel like I already know the answer to this, but was there ever a point in any of this where you were like, yeah, I don't want to keep going?
Yeah. In
Oh, you're
between,
surprising me.
i- in between when I built that free website and
Mhm.
when I got my first paying client, I
Mhm.
wanted to quit. Like I really considered just giving up on the whole thing because I had hired a business coach, not the one I was talking about, but a different one that's in the network that,
Okay.
a lot of my clients are in. I had hired her, and bless her, she had done a great job coaching me. She had given me her all for like a month, and then I couldn't pay her the like second payment and she
Uh-huh.
had to fire me.
Oh,
And that's so funny because she ended up coming back later and she became a client and it was like
yeah.
a cool thing.
Oh,
But
that's
in
so
that
great.
moment, in that moment though, like when she fired me, I felt so much shame, like
Mm-hmm.
so much shame. And I just have this really distinct memory of like walking into my living room by myself and like sitting down on the couch and just feeling so defeated and like, I don't want to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just had, that like kind of divine intervention that was just like, Jennie, no, like you're going to keep going because you're not going to be satisfied with anything else.
Wow. I love that you're sharing this because I thought you were going to be like, nope, it's been all good. So it's
No,
like,
those first few months it was tough. And again, I feel so spoiled because some coaches deal with that messy phase for a lot longer.
yeah.
And I didn't have to deal with it for longer than just a few months. But yeah, at that moment it was like I didn't necessarily and hearing that thought was like, yeah, I know, okay, I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to keep going because I'm not going to be satisfied with anything else. It was like, oh, yeah, I don't necessarily feel any less shame about what I just experienced, but I'm able
Mhm.
to like allow that and
Mm,
process it and just feel like resolve. That was what I felt then. And resolve doesn't necessarily feel good, but it's really useful for me, I found over the years, like
it's,
because it drives action.
I was just going to say it's a driver of action.
Mhm.
And I mean, I want to clarify this because I feel like you answered this before, but do you feel like the biggest difference that got you out of those difficult months and into uh, having clients and all of that was taking action, was choosing, I'm going to take action even if it's uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think yes, taking action, but doing it with certain emotions
Mhm.
behind it, like emotions of resolve and like
Mhm.
determination. Those are really effective. Whereas like there have been some times since then when I've taken action from like kind of sort of panic or like it feels sort of
Mhm.
frenzied almost.
Mhm.
And those are never useful
It
emotions
doesn't
for
pan out
me
the same way. Uh-huh.
because it doesn't work. I'm like kind of, when people talk about like throwing spaghetti at the walls, for me, that's when I start to throw the spaghetti. And I
Mm.
think if I were throwing spaghetti from like a feeling of determination, it would turn out differently. But
Mhm.
it just feels way less deliberate when I'm like kind of in panic mode.
So if you were to like pinpoint what was the difference between those months that I wasn't getting clients and when I was, you've said it was resolve, you've said it was belief, and then taking action from those. Do you feel like there's
Yeah.
anything else there that changed?
I think those are the main things, maybe with the addition of like my identity shifted somewhat too in
Mm.
that time from like I'm a coach that's using web design to kind of like get uh, you know like to pay for certification or to like kind of figure out how business works instead of being I'm a web designer And
Mm.
I'm helping coaches because I care about their well-being as in their business, and I care about getting the tools out there. Like that identity shift too, I think was
So it's like
helpful.
really getting clear on your identity so that you could speak about it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking that is I'm wondering if you had a piece of advice that would help kind of shrink down that timeline. Because you've heard me say, I've talked to a lot of coaches that, is a year or a couple years that they're in that, like, I can't get clients. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. If you have a piece of advice that could help them shrink that timeline down, what would it be?
Mm. I think it would be to not be afraid to get super specific with who they're helping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that tightly niching, like we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and to refine your pitch. There's this entrepreneur, like business coach named Daniel Priestley that I love his stuff. And he says, like, you get what you pitch for and you're always pitching.
Yeah.
And I love that because I think that like even the thoughts we tell ourselves about like, oh, I can't do this or what, I'm never going to measure up. Like even those are pitches that we're just kind of giving to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but yeah, like get really specific and know how to help people talk about you when you're not in the room, like you
Mm-hmm.
were talking about, with that pitch, because that is, I think, one of the, like you can grow a business coaching anyone,
Mm-hmm.
but the speed of which you're able to grow it, I think really, in my experience and what I've perceived with my clients, is tied to like how clearly you can talk about who you help and how quickly you can get that message out to those people.
Yeah. That's so good. And like you've said, it creates this cascade of referrals because somebody hears somebody say something. Like I had a friend the other day who was talking to one of her friends, and her friend was like, I love helping people. She's a coach and she's like, I love coaching people. I just hate selling. Like I cannot sell. And she was like, oh, I know exactly who you have to talk to. You need to go call Ashley. And within a couple hours, we were on the phone with each other. She was like, I have so much to offer. I have so much value to give to people. I just can't sell it. So it's
Yeah.
like it creates that cascade of when people know how to talk about you, they hear something come up and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I know who you need. I know
Mm-hmm.
exactly who you need.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and to kind of go along with that, like you may know exactly who you want to coach, and you may like, know that it's very specific and specific enough that you're happy to land on that niche, but then
Mm-hmm.
maybe some other coach that's in the same niche. And I actually think that's a beautiful thing, because personality in in the coaching industry,
Yeah.
your personality is a niche like refiner. So like
Yes.
you may coach, coaches how to sell, but you do it in the Ashley Jangro way versus,
Yes.
someone that's like just totally different personality is
Mm-hmm.
going to do it in a totally different way.
Yep. And
And
we're
like
going to attract dramatically different
different
people.
people. Yeah.
I love when I am in a situation where I'm like, okay, there's these other coaches that do that. Cause I'm just like, oh, that's proof of concept right there. That means people need it.
Yeah. For sure. For
Yep.
sure. And I still remember like there's so many people in the world. Like
Mhm.
I remember
Oh,
thinking, some people think, oh, the weight loss industry is like oversaturated and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh no, I used to think that until I
mhm,
had a client one time that was on this like really high profile podcast. She was a weight loss coach.
mhm.
She was on this really high profile podcast, and we had set up like this lead tracking system on her website to like try to capture as many leads from that podcast as we could. And the day the episode like went live, I sat there refreshing her application page to like, because just
Uh-huh.
every minute, like I think she had like 80 applications in the first
Oh
like
my
24 hours or something.
gosh.
Like it was just this crazy number. And just reading these stories of these people, I mean,
Yeah.
like, and how much they were struggling. And I was like, the weight loss industry could never be oversaturated.
Nope, not ever. It's like saying there's too many doctors out there. I think that every time I travel, like I was in New York recently and I was looking at all the people walking around in Times Square. And I was like, every one of these people needs a coach. There's never going to be too many coaches. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many people in the world out there. So I love that. So I feel like everything you've shared is incredibly valuable. Like, I love how you're breaking this down. Tell us about your current offer. What is it that, if people are listening and they're like, oh, I need a website. How can
Mhm.
they get in touch with you? What are you offering right now?
Yes, they can go to my website. It's just my name, jennielakeman.com. I've got everything spelled out there.
Mhm.
Our main offer right now is like custom website design. That's been our bread and butter since the beginning. And cost wise, like I talked about earlier, just kind of, it depends on the scope of what you need. Most of our clients that are needing like, a fresh website redesign with brand design as well, like the logo
Mhm.
design and everything, which often when you're redoing your website, it's also when you're kind of revisiting your DIY logo or,
Mhm.
99 Designs logo. And so for like that full package, the full suite, it's about 15K right
Mhm.
now. At the time of listening, of course, if you come to me 2 years from now, it'll probably be
Right.
different. But um, yeah, so that's our main offer. We also do website care plans that, those range from 147 a month to 597 a month. It just depends on what you need. And then we also have a DIY website course
Mhm.
that is for the brand new coach that you're like, oh my gosh, Jennie, I wish I could spend 15K on a beautiful website for you, but I just can't justify that. And I'm like totally in the pool with you. You should
Mhm.
not, you
Don't.
shouldn't
You're
spend
like,
that
if you're
much on a
starting,
website.
do not spend that. Yep. Mhm.
No, but you need something that will help you to look good and help
Mhm.
you feel credible. Like, you don't need a website, but you want one, because
Mhm.
it's just that credibility, that like confidence factor. I have a DIY website course that's super easy and short. Even if you're not technical, you can get it done literally like in a weekend. And it's only $297. So
And I send clients there all the time and people love it. So they're always telling me, they're like, yeah, I'm at that part right now where I have to put this piece of content. So we'll coach on it. We'll talk about like what they want to put there. And it's so good. So that's a really
awesome.
great offer. So they can find that on your website at jennielakeman.com.
Yes.
All of that will be linked below. I'll put a link directly to that page also. And yeah, I think this is amazing. I think you've provided so much value, even though you might have a business that's a little bit different than the listeners. There's going to be something that they find of value so much in here. And if you are a coach that's listening, make sure you go follow Jennie on Instagram and see what she's doing in Facebook groups, if you're in any Facebook groups with her, because her strategies, even though they're not strategies, they're genuine from the heart efforts to help. They're really good. So you can watch what she's doing and find ways to market your coaching business from there. So that is all we have for you today. And if you are listening, if you're a coach that's listening and you are at the point where you're ready to discuss, what it is that you want your coaching business to look like, you're ready for strategy, then you can connect with me. All of those links are down below also, or you can hop on an incredibly valuable. I've been talking about all my lives on social media lately about how valuable a consult call can be. I see it as just as potentially powerfully transformative as a really great coaching call. So if you want to come jump on a consult call with me, figure out where you want your coaching business to go, then you can do that by going to talkwithashley.com and we can talk about your goals. We can figure out what are the obstacles keeping you from getting there and I can help you get there. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you're listening to this on YouTube or if you're watching this on YouTube, and follow and review if you are listening to this on a podcasting app, just because that helps us reach more individuals. And I will see everyone next week. Thank you again so much, Jennie, for being here today.
For having me.